Um, Thank you all for joining the July meeting of ANC 1C's Planning, Zoning, and Transportation Committee. We have a few items on the agenda, and I'll start with introductions. I'm Amir Irani, chair of the committee. And going on to 1C06.
Hi, I'm Michaela. I'm in 1C06, which is the northeastern part of Adams Morgan. I would like to encourage anyone who's listening who might be one of my close neighbors to run for my seat, because I'm not running and I don't think anybody has signed up yet. So if you know somebody who lives in the small area, you can check it out on our website. Please encourage them, or gain some confidence yourself and go for it.
Thanks. And Commissioner Jackson, introduce yourself.
Chris Jackson, ANC 8. It defines the southeastern boundary of ADMO.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Jackson. And Commissioner Guthrie is also on the committee, and he is the commissioner for 1C03. He'll be joining momentarily. So the first item on our agenda is a continued discussion of the pedestrian zone in the expanded use of public space on 18th. We haven't had another weekend for the expanded use of the public space there, the pedestrianization of 18th, since the initial weekend of around June 26th. Our understanding is that we will have an opportunity to address the concerns raised by DC Health, as some people in the community may have read about or heard about. We were asked to submit a health and safety plan for the pedestrian zone, and we submitted a 3-4 page document, but have yet to receive written feedback on it, though our understanding is that we will, and until then, we don't have anything more to report. So any questions, comments from commissioners or the public on that? Hearing none, let's move on to the next.
Wait, hold on. We've got
we have a hand raised.
yeah, let me. Heather, you should be able to talk if you unmute yourself. Go ahead, Heather.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. It's confounding to me that I go from Zoom to Zoom meeting, and sometimes my face appears and sometimes it doesn't. I have no idea. I never touch my settings, so it's very confounding to me. I would appreciate getting a copy of the plan that was submitted, and I'm one of those who has a number of concerns, and would just like a little bit more information about what the status is of a return or not to the expanded street closure.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, I got your concern that you want to know more about it as soon as we know about the next steps and the status. We'll be certain to share that with the community and with you specifically, Heather.
Well, when I joined the call, you and John were talking, and I didn't quite understand if that was part of the meeting or not, but the sense was that the ANC might have to act quickly. And to me, one of the enormous gaps in this has
John
been,
and I were talking about a completely different matter.
okay, my apologies.
No, no big deal at all.
Okay, so I did hear that the mayor had suspended the event. By event, I mean the full street closure for the weekend of July 4th. What happened after that? I can't find any information about what's going on.
Yeah, so for the weekend of July 4th, all the stakeholders got together and agreed that it would be a better idea if we didn't hold the pilot for that weekend, so that we could go back and refine our approach, because the holiday weekend, we didn't know what crowds would be like. And our goal here is to provide a safe and healthy space for people to physically distance and wear masks. And so that was the reason why we didn't do it the weekend of the 4th of July.
Kristen is next. And also Amir, you can appoint people. I gave you the co-host.
Perfect, thanks.
Yeah.
Kristen.
Hi, it's Kristen Barden with the Adams Morgan Partnership. Yeah, just to follow up a little bit on Amir's comments and also on Heather's. So yeah, the holiday weekend, Amir's right. We did take an intentional pause that weekend, but it was also in part to DC government resources being redirected for holiday events. They basically told us that they weren't going to have the traffic control officers and dump truck drivers, et cetera, that would be needed for the full street closure again that holiday weekend because of holiday events. So, but Amir is right. The only explanation we've gotten for why they don't want to continue the weekend full street closure is due to health concerns. So we're waiting for an official statement from DC Health, but we are all waiting and have not gotten that yet.
Thanks, Kristen. Okay, so other discussion, questions, comments? All right.
Do you see the chat? Dennis Jaffe has a question in the chat.
So the question for people who can't read the chat or are dialing in over the phone, Dennis Jaffe has asked, or he says that he had heard indirectly that the mayor's coronavirus task force may have received a good number of complaints about the suspension of vehicular traffic. And are there efforts by the ANC to go out of the way to engage, listen to folks with concerns to achieve a greater consensus? So Dennis, this is part of those efforts. We have had and have led a pretty big engagement effort. And with every ANC meeting, standing item to discuss the pedestrian zone and the expanded use of that public space. So this is part of that effort to help bring about consensus. And we're always putting out the word also to send feedback over email at any point. So, all right. Thank you for that. Okay. And so the next item on our agenda is the continued discussion of a tree plan for BB&T Plaza. BB&T Plaza is the northeast corner of 18th and Columbia. And some background, DDOT's Urban Forestry Division had presented a plan, I think at our May or June meeting. And we took comments. We compiled neighborhood comments and concerns and sent that along. And since then, I've heard that they are, the Urban Forestry Division is giving the Adams Morgan bid. Basically, the Adams Morgan bid is running point on this project and receiving comments and compiling them, and then we'll hear and send that back to ALIT at the Urban Forestry Division at DDOT. We've received some interesting, a couple of interesting things, one of them being a plan that a resident, rather a business owner, has sent along. Let me put that up on the screen. 1 second. Michaela, do you have that actually?
Is this the one from today?
Yeah.
I can, yeah, just 1 sec. Sorry, I'm trying to find it. Can you see my screen?
No, we cannot.
Okay.
Did you find it?
Yeah, I have the PDF pulled up.
Okay.
Oh, I just need to allow Zoom. Oh wait, I haven't granted Zoom access to my, I just have to leave the webinar and come back if, to change my preferences.
If you share it by email to me, I'll put it up.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, I just sent it, Gordon.
Thanks, Michaela, for sending that.
This is Edmondson.
Yeah.
Okay. You should be able to see it now.
Can you download it and then just turn it? Because, yeah, looks like that's on its side.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, yeah, that's better. Okay, so this was an interesting plan that was put together by Alicia Edmondson, who is also on the line, and a co-owner of Songbird, which is on right next to the McDonald's on 18th Street, pretty close to BB&T Plaza. Alicia, is there something, did you want to talk about this?
Sure. Can you all hear me? I'm out in the country.
Yeah, I can hear you very clearly.
Okay. Yeah, so kind of hearing, and looking at the original plan and understanding that maybe putting a whole bunch of trees right next to the buildings that close is maybe not ideal. I was looking at the constraints and what DDOT urban forestry kind of was looking to do. And I don't know if you can all see it detailed enough, but basically there's two things that they're trying to accomplish. One is creating more greenery, like urban forestry, obviously. And then the other one is helping reduce stormwater runoff by doing getting rid of impervious surfaces and putting pervious. So I looked at this as if we put pervious surfaces on the edges where it lines up next to Columbia Road and Adams Mill, and then that helps with the water runoff. And then maybe putting some kind of planter. I think I really like the ones in Charlottesville. They act as kind of a pedestrian blockade from the cars, but also they're beautiful and they help with the streetscaping. And then instead of doing the myrtle, I think that's what the crepe myrtle, I thought a type of birch would be nice. They're a little bit lighter. And the birch that I picked is a shorter birch, which has this really beautiful, when it sheds, the bark turns red. And then along that tree line area, I was thinking of putting more pervious pavers to, again, meet the goals of DDOT urban forestry, but also keep the ground usable if we wanted to do farmers markets or events there. Mm-hmm. And then that curvature area that you see, I actually picked two different types of pervious surface treatment so that it creates movement in the space without putting any kind of barrier. So the space is still usable. That whole space becomes open and flexible, but still creating movement. And still meeting the needs of DDOT's urban forestry, which is creating more pervious surface.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay. And the size of the trees, how does those compare? How does that compare with the crepe myrtles that were?
They'll be about the same size. Eventually, they're, I think, a little bit. They're good shade trees, but they're a little bit lighter of a canopy, if that makes sense. And they're really fast growing, and they're good in almost any climate. They're I think they use them over in the Navy Yard, if I'm correct, and a couple of the streetscape areas. Okay.
And the potted plant, I do think the potted plants are beautiful. A couple things come to mind. One, how do we get water to them? Yeah. Okay. Go on.
Well, we can work on very strategic plant selection that can take some drought. And I do believe that there is a maintenance schedule that DDOT and the urban forestry has. And I was looking at what they've done at other places with bids, and it's basically They do most of the work and come up with a plan that if they need additional work, that there's a schedule that they build.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, that's one of the issues, and I don't know where the potted plants fit into the where we are in terms of the phases of design and build for the plaza.
Right.
But first, I'll say that this is very beautiful. Let me just say, and thank you for taking the time to do that. And the grass, that corner there, that looks very nice, and everything is very thoughtfully done, taking into account the comments that we have received, and some of which have come directly from you, and you've been copied on some others. So thanks for that. And my other understanding of this, what about the placement of the trees? Because the underground, there's Pepco and there's other utility issues that constrain where we can put the trees. So
So if you look at the kind of V shape, you'll see that the pervious surface does kind of surround one manhole. Now, in looking at the design, I was reading the DDOT urban forestry guidelines and book, and they had a lot of examples of spaces that they've already worked on. They do, in some of those places, actually go right up to the manholes and kind of surround them. So I don't think that it is a huge hindrance. I could not get a hold of the gentleman who did the original plan, but if I look at other ones that they've done, the pervious surface, we're not talking about putting a tree next to the manhole. The surface would be flexible and, quite frankly, easier. If they did need to access something beyond the manhole, it'd be easier for them to access it through the pervious surface than the concrete that's there now. And then if you see the main manhole and the box and the two other manholes are completely untouched.
Yeah, I was just going to say that it's my understanding that the real challenge here, and I think from your plan, it's sort of the empty space in the middle, but there's a big rectangular vault that somebody or other just put in about a year ago that is pretty clearly defined on the ground, so you can see how it fits into the plan, and it looks like it's good, but that's the principal one I'm aware of and concerned about.
So I went off of, in order to design this, it is to scale. I went off of aerials and then overlaid the design and then sketched it out. So I did completely avoid that. I know what you're talking about, that big rectangular. It's a little bit different color in the concrete that's there, and I did avoid that.
Right. I think it's a much more appealing design than what DDOT showed us before. And I did have one question, and I think it's pretty clear, but I want to make sure. The area that is that sort of arc of permeable surface toward the building, is that like level enough so that we can sort of do things on there without tripping and falling?
It's completely level. Actually, if you look at the photo to the upper left hand, that is actually a pervious surface that I think would work really well for the area. It's level. It has a great water runoff ratio. And then up to the right upper, I actually looked at, I don't know how many of you have gone to 8th Street over off of 8th and I guess Florida, where that new development is, but they did something really cool where it's
have those benches there, and
so obviously not the benches, but that floor, if we could do something where it was like stone or concrete, and then they used AstroTurf, but visually it's really cool, but it also doesn't impede at all at using the space, which was my goal, was creating something that was visual but didn't stop us from using the space for anything that we needed, and also met the needs of DDOT urban forestry. So I think that was my compromise right there.
Okay. And just seeing some questions coming in. How about the placement of the trees? Will they affect sight lines for motorists?
It shouldn't. I mean, they're set back. You know, obviously there's the pedestrian walkway goes in between. So it shouldn't affect sightline any more than, I mean, it would be better than if a building was on that corner. You know, it's a better sightline than the McDonald's side or any of the other sides.
And where, so the existing trees,
Mm-hmm.
the 4 or 5 existing trees, or rather the trees as proposed by Alit at UFD, where would those fit on this drawing?
Those trees would have been, I mean, those were all up against the BB&T building. So I would say kind of, if you took that arc that I built or designed and you made that into a big rectangle, that would have been where all those trees were.
Right.
The only existing tree that I have on there is that darker large tree.
Yeah, that's the scarlet oak, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's take some questions first with Commissioner Zatoli.
Well, thank you. First of all, I want to thank Alicia for doing all this terrific work. We should know that in an earlier life, Alicia earned her living as an urban planner. So this is not just a random business owner making plans. This is the benefit of years of professional training. So thank you, Alicia. One of the advantages of this plan over what the DDOT had proposed is that Alicia's plan better honors what the Envision Adams Morgan had proposed a couple of years ago. And I think we want to, you know, given all the work that the community put into the Envision Adams Morgan version of this plan, I'm glad to see that Alicia's version honors the gist of what they had proposed. The second advantage of Alicia's plan is that it does accommodate the interests of the DC Department of Transportation, urban forestry people, in the sense that we've got some opportunities to capture rainwater. And also, if you notice the urban forestry plan about moving the bike racks so that they discourage pedestrians from jaywalking across Columbia Road. That's another feature I think that DDOT will appreciate. And the reason for trying to accommodate DDOT is they've got some money for the plants and the permeable barriers and the like, permeable pavers. So with any luck, if this is the kind of thing that interests the Planning, Zoning, and Transportation Committee, I would say as the next step, we ought to share this plan with the folks at DC Department of Transportation, see if they like it and would be willing to help fund it. But in any case, thank you, Alicia, for a beautiful plan.
Yeah.
And I noticed Kristen had her hand up. Was that for this item, Kristen?
Kristen did have her hand up, but it came down. So let's take the next hand raised. Zach, go right ahead.
Thank you, Amir. Thanks, Alicia, for drawing this up. I really appreciate the time you took. One question, I guess I wanted to just confirm Commissioner Zatoli's statement that that is a bike share station on the, I guess, Columbia Road side there. Is that accurately depicted? Is that what you're depicting there?
Yes, it is. I did not mark it. I apologize.
No worries. I made the assumption, and it looks big enough to accommodate all the folks who are coming to Songbird, so that's good. The question I did have, and I know it's certainly a compromise between the BB&T owners and occupants and the community, but I know that one of the purposes of putting trees here was in order to create a shaded space for people to hang out. And I'm just wondering how this layout of trees and the types of trees will create that shaded space for the community.
Yeah, so I think the birch tree, you know, that particular birch tree, it gets about 30 feet high. It's not nearly as tall as a lot of other ones, but it canopies out really well. And, you know, as the sun comes up over in the summer, those trees should shade the plaza really well in the afternoon after a few years of maturity.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. And these permeable pavers, the only thing that kind of came to mind for me is I haven't seen these. I mean, the only time I've ever seen them right now is what's in front of me by zooming in on that picture. And does it look like that each is its own piece?
It is its own piece. So the way permeable pavers work is they are either a rock or a concrete, and what you're doing is you're creating a hard surface, but then the design of it allows for water to seep through each piece.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it's not plastic. I was looking at what DDOT usually likes to use, and just for maintenance purposes, some of the softer material ones they wear after time.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like for DDOT and what they choose, and what most cities choose, is to do stone or concrete. So the dirt and the way that the water comes in is actually just through those gaps. The gaps are not large.
Right. Okay. What I've seen in Colorado Park looks pretty nice. They have those rectangles and gaps in between. Is that exactly what you're thinking there?
Exactly.
Okay. So it could be those rectangles. It could be these like little squares that you have here.
Yeah, I picked those because the coloration change is kind of, you know, when I think of urban design, when you think of just doing everything in a flat surface, color starts to become part of how you make your space. And so if we're talking about pervious surfaces, changing the color a little bit more was what I was kind of suggesting. Sorry, guys.
No big deal. No, this is lovely. And you know, I don't know about the potted plants, and I don't know if that's within the scope of what we're advising on or giving comments on. So, you know, I'd love to see that there, but I don't know if it will be. And then as far as the placement of the trees goes, perhaps Alec will have something to say about that. But I think this is a lovely plan. Do we have the old plan that we can just pull up? I think it's on the website.
Should we start with the meeting? You want to start the meeting?
I mean, what do you think the timing is?
Commissioner Wright, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I really like the work that Alicia's done. I think it just, when we're basing it off solely on the placement of the trees, I think the version she has is much more intentional. It allows for a lot more uses of the space, and it still provides, you know, some shady areas that look like they're going to be in the middle or towards the center of the plaza. So I think it's much more clear to me how the space will be used in her design than in this one. So I think it's a great plan.
Yeah, agreed. Thanks. Commissioner Guthrie?
Yeah, I have a very similar take to Michaela on this. I really like Alicia's plan, particularly when contrasted with what DDOT had brought us. I'm not clear on how much work they're willing to do on paving issues. My understanding was this all got generated by Kristen figuring out that DDOT would actually put in some trees if we would tell them where. And so I'm not clear about the funding, and maybe there would need to be a little bit of community funding for things like those big, beautiful pots for the plants. But I would much prefer Alicia's design to what was proposed by DDOT. I just think it is much more respectful of the site, would be much easier for the community to use, and would really go a long way toward activating that space.
Yeah. Okay. So looking at the plan, could you go back one slide there, or on the DDOT, the overhead view? Yes, exactly. So one of the big differences is with DDOT's plan is that those trees are pretty much up against the properties. And I've received emails from the property owners also complaining about that fact, how they're up against their properties, and that being a problem for those property owners. But I do like Alicia's plan for many of the reasons that were previously articulated by my fellow commissioners. So are there other questions, comments from members of the community, other commissioners?
Yeah, hey, this is Japer. I just want to say thank you so much, Alicia, for doing the free renderings. Always appreciate community members and being able to use their talents and skills. I think that since what this committee, and I'm not a part of this committee, but what this committee will be voting on is essentially if we can plant trees or not. And if we want to incorporate Alicia's idea, I don't think we can plant all 5 of those trees. So I think it would, if we could come up with some type of agreement onto which trees should be planted and which trees won't, thinking in the future when we do get additional funding for all of the other things, that we would be able to just simply add the furniture, simply add the different turf and like ground layouts, add the different activation space things. But I think right now it's just too many trees. I mean, I'm fine with all the trees, but I think community-wide, it's too many trees. My suggestion would be to get rid of the 2 most northern, or I guess the 2 trees closest to BB&T, which are closest to the building owners, and keep the 3 bottom trees. That's where I'm at.
Sorry, could you articulate that? So you want to get, are you speaking from the plan put forward by UFD?
Yes.
Okay. And you want to, or your suggestion is to remove the trees that are closest to Columbia Road?
The trees that are furthest from Columbia Road, the ones that are closest to the BB&T entrance, and the one that's closest to the existing bike share station. To me, that makes it like there could still be activation space in the future. It's also not as close to the property owners who had issues with losing sight lines, and then also having like birds. And I saw a weird email about birds. So I think that could be a good compromise. And if you switch to Alicia's plan, if you're able to, I would hope to see like some sort of, so the only difference there is there would just be 2 more trees, essentially, that could be incorporated, or not even. It looks like really just 1 more tree in the middle. I don't know. I think that if we get rid of all 5 trees, and wait for something, we're going to be waiting for a long time. And like, it's been like 2 summers now. It's hot. It's a really hot plaza. So if we could get at least some shading there, and then think about, you know, in the future, how we could bring the community together to activate the space. And I've mentioned this a few times, I would actually like to stop calling it BB&T Plaza. I know that other people on this call may not want that, but I would like to be able to dedicate this space. And I think that that could be a process that we could use the ANC for as well.
Okay, so I do like Alicia's plan quite a bit. And I think it's worthwhile for us to, I mean, this is why we have the committee meeting, so that we can get more things on the table, get questions out there, and move the ball forward in a substantive way before the full ANC meeting, and we pass our recommendation on August 5th. So I'd like to have this plan in front of Alip and see what his feedback is and what can be accomplished by UFD. I'd like to get Alicia's plan in front of him. And Ted, it looks like you have your hand raised there.
Yes. I agree. At this point, I would much prefer to go forward with Alicia's plan and see what we can get accomplished in that plan in the immediate future. I think the original plan that we got was something that was not sensitive to the space, was not sensitive to the uses that we were going to do. It looked like something that had just been sort of thrown together. Whereas hers is very thoughtful and feels very feng shui to me. Mm-hmm. It looks like something that would really be a positive contribution to that space. And I really think that we should, at this point, try to advance that plan as the operative plan as opposed to the other one.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agreed. And Kristen, go right ahead. I see you have your hand raised.
Much more interesting than what DDOT proposed. Thank you, Alicia, for spending all the time on it. I think the permeable pavers are a great idea. Hopefully UFA will have funding for that. I know they have funds for the trees. That's all they've promised is trees. But maybe they'll do, since this is only 4 trees and they proposed 5, maybe there's a little bit of money for the permeable pavers. I know all we can do is ask. So, but this is great, and I think it would look really, really nice and be a big improvement.
Okay, great. So I don't think we're. It looks like we have a few more questions. Ted, go ahead.
I had my hand raised from earlier.
Previously, okay. Commissioner Jackson.
I just wanted to thank Alicia as well for working on this. I think this looks really nice, and just like everybody else, I think this is a much better iteration of what we had before. So I'd also move that we move this forward and see how far we can get with it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So, and what I see some questions around community discussion about the prior plan having months of community discussion. And I think when we look at Alicia's plan, it's an improvement, and I think it builds on what Alip had put forward. And it also builds on it in a way that incorporates a lot of the comments that we've received over the last couple of months. Comments from the commercial property owners there, comments from residents. So I see it as an improvement and part of the community process that appears to be working. So I'm happy to get this out in front of Alip. Commissioner Wright, go right ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with you on that, even though this is the first time we're presenting this. What I heard when I asked for input from my constituents was they were really happy that there were going to be trees, but they largely disapproved of the placement. So I think this addresses that. And, when we send out the listserv update, I'll blast it out on Nextdoor. So at that point, we can collect even more feedback. And I think at least the people who contacted me would probably, think this is a good step forward in taking their comments into account.
Great. Thanks, Commissioner Wright. I don't think that there's a committee action to take here, a vote to be taken. Why don't we send this over to Alit to get some feedback quickly, and so we can iterate over the next 2 weeks before the full ANC meeting on August 5th. So any other comments or questions from the community?
Hey, Amir, a person named Gambrell has a question, or put it into the question. They say, a water source seems critical, not only for maintaining the trees, but also for servicing, cleaning, the use of the space in the future. Hopefully the ANC can advocate with the city for a water tap.
Yes, we had talked about that with the potted plants as well. I don't know how much money is going to be there for us to get that, but it is something that we'll bring up. So thanks for bringing that up, Alan. The community should feel free to take the time over the ensuing 2 weeks to present, whether it's a rendering or comment or anything. Go ahead and submit it to us, and we'll take it into account before our ANC vote on August 5th. Okay. So any other questions, concerns regarding the tree plan before we move on?
Yeah, is it correct that what you're saying is there will be an agenda item on the full ANC meeting? It's just that we don't know quite what it will be at this point?
Yeah, there will be an agenda item to approve a tree plan for BB&T Plaza at the August 5th meeting. But we don't know what that rendering will look like at this point. And, if there's nothing, that it could very well be that nothing gets approved at the August 5th meeting, like with any resolution.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that it was kept on the agenda, even though we don't have a committee recommendation, because my understanding is they need to hear from us in August if anything is going to go forward with this. Absolutely, yeah. And one of the reasons why we're having the August 5th meeting is this one of a couple of reasons. Hearing no other questions or comments, I will continue to the next item on the agenda, a resolution to oppose and appeal development at 1808 Ontario Place. Commissioner Zatoli?
Thank you. I hear different information about this project, and former Commissioner Alan Gambrell, honorary Commissioner Alan Gambrell, says, "Well, this is the zoning has been approved for this, which means we need to step in because the owner's original proposal violates the zoning constraints that the neighborhood worked so hard to get into place." On the other hand, people at the DC Consumer and Regulatory Affairs Department say, "Oh, there's a preliminary approval for what the owners had proposed, but review by the zoning administrator hasn't taken place yet." I must admit, I'm a little bit confused about the inner workings of decision making at the DCRA. But in any case, I think what would be very helpful tonight would be to hear from Alan Gambrell and from some of the neighbors near the property about what their concerns are about what the owner had originally proposed. And hearing those concerns, then we'll be in a better position to address with DCRA just what they're doing and where we need to raise our objections.
Thank you, Commissioner Zatoli. Former Commissioner Gambrell, are you there?
Yes, but I was going to follow one of the neighbors. So if you want to open the lines up to her, if she wants to raise her hand, then I'll follow up.
Is that Kathleen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Go right ahead, Kathleen.
Okay, great. So I'm Kathy Gille, and I live at 2852 Ontario Road, and I'm representing the residents of a small cooperative building that's located right at the corner of Ontario Road and Ontario Place. So we're here to request your support for a resolution to appeal what we see as a blatant zoning violation of the height restrictions of the RF1 zone. So it has to do with the height restrictions. It's for a proposed development as 1808 Ontario Place Northwest. We have heard from the DCRA, we as a co-op have heard from the DCRA on June 23rd that the permit allowing this development is, quote, ready for issuance as approved. And we expect it could be issued any day. So that's why, and once the permit's issued, we'll have only 60 days. In fact, it's possible the 60-day clock could be even ticking now. But certainly once the permit is issued, we'll have 60 days. So we wanted to be ready and present this to you today. So as I said, we live directly adjacent to the property to be developed. So we're not just concerned for the impact of this violation on our property. One entire side of our building overlooks the length of 1808 Ontario Place. But we're also concerned about the implications for the larger neighborhood if this development is allowed to circumvent the existing RF1 zoning regulations. These are regulations that the entire community fought very hard for to enact just a few years ago. So I just want to give you a little background on the steps that we've taken already to address this issue, both with the developer and with the city. When we first learned about this proposed development in February, we communicated our concerns to the developer that the plans appeared to be in violation of the zoning regulations. We hired an experienced architect so that we would know exactly what we were talking about and who would help us understand the technicalities of it. We went to meet with that architect, with the zoning administrator, to explain our specific objections to the zoning. That was in early March. And then we clearly delineated those violations in April when we filed our response to the so-called neighborhood notification letter concerning that property. So we've been working on this for a while, and we've done everything we can to express to both the city and the developer our concerns that this development must comply with zoning regulations. In terms of the substance, the original plans actually had two serious zoning violations. One of them related to the rear yard setback, and the second related to the height, I'm sorry. The zoning administrator did require the developer to adjust the design to meet the zoning requirements for the rear yard setback. It was going to go way into the backyard, but the zoning administrator required them to push it back, and that issue is now resolved. So we're here just talking about the height. But when it came to the consideration of the height of the building, the zoning administrator is now allowing the building height to be measured improperly. As a result of this improper measurement, the decision improperly authorizes the construction of a 41-foot tall 4-story building. The zoning regulations state clearly that the permitted height of a building in an RF1 zone should not exceed 35 feet and 3 stories. So the problem is the developer is not taking the building height measurement at the proper place. In fact, a communication we received from the zoning administrator himself acknowledges, and I'm going to quote from this, that the design may not meet the current zoning regulation standard for measurement, end of quote. Yet he said he would allow the permit to proceed. So we were told on May 21st that the permit was going to proceed with what he acknowledges is something that does not meet the zoning regulation standards. So this again would allow the permit for a construction of an illegal 4th story in a building that is 6 feet higher than should be allowed. Now, if this is allowed to stand, it would be a disturbing outcome, not only for us and our neighboring properties, but for the whole community of Lanier Heights. As I said, we had a multi-year, with many, many people involved to win this RF1 zoning status, and we believe it should be upheld. We, 2852 Ontario Road, are really looking forward to actually having new neighbors next door and a new building on this property that will enhance the neighborhood. So that is not the issue. But we will insist that the building respect the zoning regulations that so many people in this community fought long and hard to enact. We have Alan Gambrell here who's working with us. And I know obviously that many of you know that he has a great deal of experience working with these matters, and he can help clarify the specific zoning violation that we're planning on appealing. I want to thank you all for your time tonight, and especially Commissioner Zatoli for his work in helping us forward this, and thank the committee. And Alan, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Kathleen. Am I on?
Yes.
Okay. Terrific. Kathleen, I don't know why you characterized me as a zoning expert, because that was an absolutely terrific overview. And I was just sitting here with my notes, scratching things out that I'm not going to say because I don't have to. You did such a wonderful job. I just wanted to clarify as far as where the permit is right now. My understanding is has been approved by the zoning administrator, but it's being held up because of the applicant's failure to respond to some other building concerns that affect the abutting property. So the zoning decision has been made, it's just the permit has not been issued. The only thing I'm going to really cover in terms of technicalities, because again, Kathleen did such a good job, is I'm going to read to you the zoning administrator's explanation about his decision. And now keep in mind that what Kathleen mentioned is where you measure the building height, and the regulations give what they call exceptions to grade, which means you don't measure there. And one of those areas where you do not measure is called an areaway, which is supposed to be open at the top and no more than 5 feet in width from the building face. So the zoning administrator wrote the following to the neighbors and the zoning expert who worked with the neighbors. Although the existing areaway may not meet the current zoning regulation standard for measurements, it is clearly an areaway and can be considered as an existing non-conforming feature. Now, I read and reread that multiple times and frankly can't make a lot of sense out of it. But let me just sort of cover 3 quick points here for you. First, and this is something I didn't mention, that the zoning regulations require you to measure at the lower of the natural or finished grade, finished being something like concrete, the lower of the natural or finished grade at the building facade. They require that. Is the zoning administrator measuring there? No, he's not. He's measuring in the yard in front of the porch. Second, is the areaway at this property open at the top? No, it's not. Third, is the areaway that would be exempt as a measurement point less than 5 feet wide from the building facade? The areaway at this property is 7 feet wide, so it does not comply with the regulation. So you come back to this statement by the zoning administrator that frankly does not make sense. I think you have in hand photos that show you exactly where the correct measurement point is located, because the building owners did send the ANC commissioners some photos. And so we marked those up for you. So just to wrap this up, I just want to reinforce what Kathleen said. With this resolution, you have the opportunity to prevent these newly developed regulations, which were put into place last year and a few years ago, from being altered, changed, corrupted, really. If this is allowed to happen, then this abuse of the language is going to happen again and again and again all over this city and RF neighborhoods. So I really urge you to take a vote tonight in favor of this appeal so that the full ANC will be in a position in your August meeting to consider the resolution. Thanks.
Thank you, former Commissioner Gambrell. Questions from commissioners? Comments? Commissioner Guthrie.
Yeah, it strikes me, I haven't looked at this case as thoroughly as I have some of them that we have appealed in the past. But it appears to me that we're back to the basement cellar issue. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to get an extra story's worth of development into a project by claiming that the bottom floor is a cellar, which historically was a non-habitable space. And the way that the regulations were written, they were written in terms of number of stories without including cellars. But if you have a basement, then it is included. And whether it's a basement or cellar has to do with things like issues involving the areaway. And it appears to me that they're trying to circumvent the rules on the limits of number of stories in the RF zone. And I strongly believe that we should appeal this. The zoning administrator regularly comes up with truly bizarre arguments to support his determination to allow developers to do whatever the hell they want in the neighborhoods, despite what the neighborhood has agreed to as the standards. And I think that the committee itself, I'd like to move that we appeal, that the ANC 1C appeal the zoning administrator's decision, and that we go forward with an appeal on this. If it turns out that the zoning administrator is going to hold this up for quite some time, you know, we have our ability to file the appeal once we have approved the appeal by the full ANC. So I would like to make the motion that we support the constituents' request to appeal this case.
Okay, Commissioner Wright, go ahead, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I just have a question kind of on process. I know that there's a resolution tied to this agenda item that I think Commissioner Zatoli sent around at one point. So I was just wondering if we would be voting on that resolution or just voting generally to appeal.
I'm happy to defer to Commissioner Guthrie's language.
I would propose that that the appeal be based as articulated in the resolution to provide us with the great weight from articulating the bases for it. My point was just that I would like to have the committee vote on whether to recommend passage of the resolution to the full ANC at the August meeting, and that we go ahead and deal with it at the August meeting to allow the ANC to proceed whenever the zoning administrator gets around to issuing the decision. Is that clear, Michaela? Did that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, so are you moving the resolution? Or are you moving that the committee?
Moving the resolution, yeah.
Got it. Commissioner Jackson?
I believe Ted brought up last time, and so I thought like the last time we didn't take a vote on this is because the permit hadn't been issued, and that sounds like it's still the case. Am I incorrect?
My understanding is that it has not actually been issued, but that it could be issued at any point in time. And we're very clear about what they're going to be requesting. The zoning administrator has already articulated what his position and the position of his office will be. So I don't feel like we need to get further input on the basis for the appeal. that we can go ahead and approve it now so that the paperwork can go out whenever that is, and we won't have to have another meeting afterwards and be concerned about the time constraints for filing the appeal.
Okay. So were there other people from the community that wanted to?
I think my motion needs a second.
I'll second. Or Commissioner Zatoli, did you want to second that?
I'm not a member of this committee, so I have to defer to one of the others.
Of course, yeah. So I'll second it. And members of the community, are there any other comments or questions or things that you would like to bring up before this committee, before we take a vote? Okay, hearing none. Commissioners, questions?
I guess my only question is I guess it's not really a question, it's a comment. I just would really like to see the permit and be able to go and do my own research like I've done on all these other things before us making a great weight action. But that's really all.
Okay, so the permit might come through between now and our August 5th meeting. But the understanding is that the position has already been laid, and there's kind of a stake in the ground there. So shall we take a vote? All those in favor of the resolution to oppose an appeal B2005159 for 1808 Ontario Place, please indicate so by saying aye.
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 Any against? Any abstentions? All right, it's 4-0. 4-0-0. Then I think having had that agenda item, we have one more resolution in support of the 17th Street protected bike lane.
So I believe Randy Downs from 2B is still on. If Gordon could promote him.
Yep.
I think he would probably be best to speak on this. I could talk a little bit about why Adams Morgan should support this. First, we have passed, not just in our comp plan, but in a few other resolutions in support of connected and protected bike infrastructure. And this bike infrastructure on 17th Street is very close to my single member district, but also Adams Morgan as a whole. I know a lot of people that would be using this to come from Adams Morgan and to Adams Morgan. And again, it provides just one more connectivity point from other connected bike lanes all throughout the district. So if Randy is on the line.
Yeah. Hey there, ANC 1C. Great to be with you. As Japer said, I'm Randy Downs, Commissioner for 2B05. And I'm excited to be with you and give you a little bit of background on this project. Before I begin, let me say that I'm here in my personal capacity, not representing the full ANC, nor DDOT. I've been involved in this project for some time, and so just here in my personal perspective. So a bit of history. This project was in DDOT's 2005 Bike Master Plan and has been in the various iterations of the Bike Master Plan since then. In 2017, AT2B formally requested DDOT to explore adding protected bike lanes on this corridor. And then since then, DDOT has been studying, doing lots of community engagement over the years. And then this year, they came back to us with a updated design for the protected bike lanes. And the area that it would encompass is from T Street all the way to K Street. The proposed design would be a one-way protected bike lane on the east side going north, and a one-way protected bike lane going south on the west side. And so, to sum it all up, last week ANC 2B heard the proposal and voted on the notice of intent. We passed a resolution in support with contingencies, 7-1-0. And so happy to answer any other questions you have or give additional details.
Yeah, so we're gonna try to pull up the master plans now, but in the meantime, I know that a few commissioners were always interested in those contingency plans, or not contingency plans, those oh God, like the alterations and the minor things and suggestions that 2B has really worked hard with neighbors and business owners to ensure that there's specific pickup drop-off zones, parking spots. Could you talk a little bit about that process? I know that we definitely try to do a lot of community engagement.
Sorry about that, guys.
No, it's okay. Yeah, so could you talk a little bit about the business and neighbor engagement that you have had on 17th Street?
Of course. So as I conveyed, this project has been in discussion for quite some time, and more so in a reality since 2017. Since then, DDOT has done many studies. They put up 7 time-lapse cameras to study loading and unloading. We've done lots of site visits on the corridor, specifically the commercial corridor between R and P. It's been discussed many times in our Transportation and Public Infrastructure Committee. Individual commissioners have done lots of outreach to the various businesses and residents. And then additionally, most recently, the businesses along 17th Street, many of them were engaged, and many of them indicated their support. And so Duke's Grocery, JR's, Astoria, Agora, Floriana, Miko, many of the businesses are supportive of this design. The road diet, the additional loading and unloading space that it's going to be providing on the commercial corridor, the connectivity to the businesses from southbound or northbound cyclists. There has been some hesitancy on other businesses that do receive a lot of vehicular traffic, the frame shop, hardware store, but we're working through all of that. And so in our resolution, requested DDOT continue to engage with the businesses and residents, specifically on the ride hailing, the loading zones, and deliveries. Take into account all the unique needs of each specific business. Making sure that additional traffic calming measures are pursued. Incorporation of the DDOT's Safe Routes to School recommendations. We have Ross Elementary around here on our street. Soviet Safeway. That's great. As well as additional bike parking along the corridor to promote safer and more coordinated bike parking. Making sure that our streeteries, the pandemic-related streeteries and pandemic-related extended sidewalks remain in place until after the public health emergency. And then additionally, DDOT continue to engage us as this project progresses.
Great, thank you. I do know that one of the I would say concerns that Adams Morgan residents have about this is that it just doesn't go far enough north. Have you had any discussions with DDOT about extending 17th Street cycle track or bike lanes up into Adams Morgan, particularly at least until Florida?
Yeah, there has been discussion, and you know, when you think about a bike network, it's really most effective when all the bike lanes are connected and protected. And so to have this go to T, you know, is an accomplishment, of course, but we would love. I personally would love to see it connected even further north. DDOT has said they want to get this project in the ground first, and then potentially explore additional facilities. There is an opportunity, I feel, for a unprotected contraflow going north of T. It is a 17th Street and north of T is a very low stress area, and a contraflow, an unprotected contraflow, would have very minimal impacts on parking, if any. And so it is another way to endorse additional safer routes for cyclists in corridors like this. And so, yes, it has been a part of the discussion, but at this time, DDOT has indicated that the boundaries of this project will be from T to K.
Okay.
Those are all the questions I have.
We have some comments. Commissioner Downs, thanks for joining. We have some comments from members of the community. So I'll just go in order. Zach, go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner Arani. Thanks, Randy, for joining us today in your personal capacity. In your volunteer capacity, you have worked tirelessly on this project, so I really appreciate you joining us tonight. And I want to follow up with Commissioner Bowles' raising of the issue of this project or of a future bike facility north of T Street. I really value that this current project is not going north of T, but in order to get past what Randy said was DDOT potentially exploring going further, I think that this is an opportunity for Adams Morgan ANC to put its mouth where its mouth is. And as you note in the resolution, I know I emailed a few of you earlier this week, but as you know, the resolution, you correctly state that ANC is in favor of connected and protected bike lanes, especially those that lead into Adams Morgan and or support safety for the residents and visitors of Adams Morgan. I think, therefore, it's appropriate for you to add a second therefore at the end of this. You know, first, obviously, therefore, you're supporting the current plan, but you're also resolving to request the DDOT plan for a continuation northbound to Florida Avenue. And that's my piece on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Zach. Commissioner Bowles, any comments on that?
No, yeah, absolutely. Just echo that. I mean, I think we should move with an amendment to state that we want connected, protected bike infrastructure in Adams Morgan, and if it's happening somewhere near, try to move it into RANC as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Kristen, go ahead. Kristen?
You should be unmuted, Kristen.
Okay, let's take the next question. Swiderski, you're on.
Sorry, apparently I was not unmuted. I already sent my comments to Japer and Chris in response to the NOI, and so I want to also echo Zach in pushing this commission not only to support the existing proposal, but to continue pushing DDOT for the extension beyond T Street, and making sure that it really does connect the neighborhood, and that, you know, while a unprotected extension, contraflow extension may be, you know, the first step, that really the standard that we should push for should be connected and protected. And that, you know, if it has to be a two-stage or multi-stage process, that's one thing, but that unprotected, especially in, you know, areas on and right off of U Street, which is often high traffic and high speed traffic, you know, that push for protected as much as humanly possible.
Okay. I hear the ongoing and strong support for connected and protected bike lanes there. Thank you. So questions from other commissioners?
I just wanted clarification. I understand Randy is here as an individual and not on behalf of ANC, the ANC, but I had a problem initially with weighing in on something that isn't in our turf, mostly because I wouldn't want someone else weighing in on what's on our turf. And I just wanted to confirm that in the first place that they had passed their resolution in support, and that we had the language that had been left out of the proposed resolution that's been included in the draft now. Is that true, Japer?
I haven't had time to upload it, but it will be 1-to-1 with 2B and their recommendation.
Oh, that's fine. As long as we're supporting 2B, it really feels like this is 2B's resolution to be the lead on. And I'm certainly happy to support them in trying to connect the infrastructure. I just want to be clear that we're consistent with what they've asked for.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just being a partner in other folks. They didn't specifically reach out, but I've been paying close attention, and a lot of other residents have been paying attention to this. And it seemed like 2B would be interested in working with us on a resolution.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you'll, to clarify, you'll add as an exhibit or an addendum or something 2B's resolution, and then in our we will have in our resolved, you'll specifically bullet point those as amended by 2B, whatever those amendments are, and then add the other resolved by
Correct.
that Zach had mentioned, right?
Yes.
And for the committee and residents, I put in the chat our draft, or the resolution that passed. So there's a link to it there if you'd like to look at it.
What was the vote?
The vote was 7-1-0.
Okay.
Commissioner Bowles, I sent some language in an email earlier, but if you'd like to get together on that, I'm happy to do that as well.
Yeah, certainly.
So for purposes of process, since Commissioner Bowles isn't a member on the committee, I'm happy to move the resolution that will be reflective of the additions that we talked about, and put it to the full ANC for approval at the August meeting.
And I'll second that.
Great. I saw a hand go up and a hand go down. So any other questions from members of the public or the commissioners?
I guess
sorry?
I had a comment about Commissioner Guthrie's question about, the fact that this is within 2B, and I would just point out that, although I live in 1C, I'm half a block from U Street, and I frequently use the 17th Street bike share station and the bike lanes. And so I think that, the condition of the facility is strongly relevant to Adams Morgan residents and to the commission, even if it fails to actually extend to the district itself by 1 block.
I don't disagree with you on that. My concern is that in the first place, if you have 2 full ANCs that are opposed on an issue, it's very difficult to grant great weight to both of those opinions. And the other is that I try to respect and defer to the geographical boundaries for projects that are exclusively within the boundaries of another ANC. I don't believe that absent 2B's interest in our concurring with their view on this, that we should be involved in it otherwise. And since they have passed this, I'm more than happy to support them. But because it's entirely within their ANC boundaries, from a matter of ANC deference to other ANCs, I'm not about to take a position that suggests that ANC 1C is wiser than 2B and can tell them what should happen in their ANC.
Yeah, thanks for all parties on that. And that's what this resolution is hopefully going to do, to show that, it's necessary because we have residents that utilize this infrastructure, but we're also one-to-one and are supporting 2B's great work.
Great. So hearing nothing else, let's call to a vote. All those in favor of the resolution with the proposed changes as indicated, with the additional resolution from 2B as well. So all those in favor of the resolution, please indicate so by saying aye.
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 Any against? Any abstentions? Okay, that's 4-0.
Thanks, commissioners.
Great to be with you all.
Thanks, Commissioner Downs and Commissioner Bowles.
Yeah, thanks, Randy, for coming. Helpful.
All right, and that's the end of all the items.
Bye.